Getting your first teaching job is super exciting, but can also be pretty intimidating. You don't know what the process is like, you've never interviewed for a teaching position before, and you want to make the best first impression possible so you can nail your dream job.
This interview's over, and I get the job.
Don't worry, I'm here to help. In this video, I'm going to go over all of the best tips and tricks to get hired for your first teaching job.
I'm listening.
I'm going to go over what the hiring process is like, how to get interviews, what to bring with you on the interviews, and my best tips for having a successful interview. Now for this video, I'm going to be focusing on public schools here in the United States. Obviously, the process can vary widely when it comes to private schools and charter schools, and the process even varies for public schools in different districts and states, but this should give you a general idea of what to expect. Let's start with the typical steps for getting hired as a teacher at a public school. Step number 1, get certified. This means you've gone through your bachelor's program, you've completed a teacher preparation program like an internship or student teaching. Most likely this is part of your undergraduate degree. You have passed your certification exams and you have applied to become a certified teacher in your state. Don't worry, all of the information you need should be on your state's Department of Education website, and it's possible that your college or university will help walk you through these steps, or even the district that you're applying for can help aid in the process as well. Step 2 is to apply to the district. Once again, all the information should be on the district's website. You're mostly going to be submitting the same information that's on your resume, such as your contact information, your work experience, your education, and any other relevant questions that they may ask. Then you most likely will have to go through a screening interview. This is typically done over the phone or through a video conference, and they just ask very basic questions to make sure that you're at least somewhat qualified for the position.
I'm by far the most qualified person they're interviewing.
This will then place you into an applicant pool with hundreds or even thousands of other teachers who have applied to the same district. Step 3 is to apply for specific positions. There's a couple different ways you can do this, and again, it varies on the district. It's possible that administrators can reach out to you specifically from that applicant pool. I wouldn't count on it though. If there are a lot of applicants for your district, it's very easy for your application to get kind of buried. You also may be able to go on and view specific openings within the district and apply specifically for those, or you may just have to reach out to schools and administrators directly. Step 4 is to complete the interview process. This could be a single interview with just one administrator, or a single interview with an interview panel that includes multiple staff members and administrators. This could be multiple interviews over the course of several days, and you could even be asked to teach a mock lesson. It really just depends.
You're gonna get your interview, okay?
And finally, step 5 is to complete paperwork with HR. Sometimes this is done over the phone or through a video conference. Sometimes you have to go attend a meeting with other new hires, but this is where you're signing your contract, maybe you're getting fingerprinting done, signing up for healthcare, and completing all the paperwork that says you are officially hired as a teacher in that district. Now that we've covered the basics for the hiring process, let's talk about tips for actually getting interviews, because sometimes that is the hardest part. Tip number 1 is to make as many connections during your student teaching as possible. If you make a good first impression on the administrators at the school where you complete your student teaching, if they have a position open up, you will probably be one of the first people they interview. Even if they don't have positions open up, they probably know principals at other schools that could potentially interview you as well. So making a good first impression at your student teaching is a great way to start to get interviews when you enter that hiring process. Tip number 2 is to reach out to administrators personally. I mentioned this before, if your district has a lot of applicants, your name will very easily get lost within the applicant pool, and it will never see the light of day unless you are proactive. If you do not live in the area, maybe you're moving to a new state or a new area of your state, you can reach out to administrators through email. Do a quick Google search of some schools that you are interested in working at, send the administrator an email. Make sure that you introduce yourself, you attach your cover letter, you attach your resume. If you have a digital portfolio, you can send a link to that or attach it to the email. You may also want to include letters of reference and an example lesson plan.
That's a lot of pressure.
I know that was a lot of information, and if you have not started preparing any of these materials, that can sound very overwhelming. So to help you out, I do have a resume template that includes matching cover letter templates. I have a portfolio template that can be used to create a physical portfolio as well as a digital portfolio. And I have formal lesson plan templates that can be used to write those detailed plans you would want to share with administrators. So I will link all of those for you down in the description box. Now, if you live nearby or even within the district that you are applying to, I recommend visiting the schools in person. I know right now, because of the pandemic, they may have certain restrictions in place, but you can always call the school ahead of time to figure out if you're able to stop by. Once you stop by, ask to speak with the administrator. Chances are they will be busy and you will not get to talk to them. That is okay. Make sure that you bring something with you that you can leave behind with the secretary. So I always brought folders with me. They're very cheap, very easy to put together, and you can create many of them at one time when you're applying to multiple schools. Inside of this plastic folder, I just have some page protectors with my cover letter, my resume, and then an example lesson plan. I would also add in here maybe any relevant pages from my portfolio or letters of reference or past evaluations that maybe I got during my student teaching that I think the administrator would like to see. Again, the great thing about this is you can create like 5 or 10 of them all at one time, but I will recommend that you customize the cover letter for each principal. Make sure that you put the actual school name on there and the principal name, and maybe include a little detail about the school that you found online within your cover letter. That way it's personalized. Now, if the administrator is available and you get to speak to him or her, that's great. Just introduce yourself, ask if the school is hiring, and then make sure you personally give them that folder. Whether you get to speak to the administrator or not, make sure you follow up with an email 1 to 2 days later and attach all of the things you had in your folder as digital copies to the email as well, because there's a pretty good chance either the folder never made it to the administrator, or if it did, it's probably amongst piles of papers on their desk. That's okay. Make sure you are proactive and attach it digitally to the email. That way they definitely see it. And my third and final tip is to consider subbing. I know it's not the same as getting an official teaching job, but subbing is actually a great way to get to know the schools and figure out where you're gonna be the best fit. Especially if you sub often in one specific school, if a position becomes available, whether it's a long-term sub position or a permanent hire, you will be one of the first people they go to. Next, let's talk about what to bring with you to an in-person interview.
Professional resume, athletic and special skills resume, and Dwight Schrute trivia.
Obviously, right now, a lot of interviews are being conducted over the phone or through video conferences. I do have an entire video dedicated to tips for that, which I will link for you down in the description box. But if you do have an in-person interview, the first thing you should bring is a copy of your cover letter, resume, and an example lesson plan. Once again, I recommend putting it in a folder. Even if you have already dropped one off the school, still bring another one with you to the interview. That way, when you sit down, you can hand it directly to the administrator and they have something to kind of hold on to and remember you by. I always get a lot of questions about if you ask for this back. I never did. I always just gave it to them to keep, but I did have certain cases where the administrator would give it back to me at the end, and then I could just reuse it, change out the cover letter, and I was good to go. The second item I recommend bringing is a physical portfolio. Once again, I get a lot of questions. People say, Michelle, I have a QR code on my resume that they can scan and go to my portfolio. I don't care. Bring a physical one with you. Here's the thing. Administrators are very, very busy. The chances of them actually scanning that QR code and looking through it, whether you sent it in an email, doesn't matter. The chances are slim. Having a physical portfolio is like a security blanket during your interview. This right here is the perfect way to answer questions. You can turn to specific pages, you can show examples, you can show photographs, and it makes your answers really come alive. So even if you have a digital portfolio, print it out, put it in a binder, and bring it with you. But here's a little hack for you. Just because you bring it doesn't mean they're gonna ask to look at it. So you have to be proactive and open it up and show them pages as you are answering questions. Now, I have 2 videos that you may find helpful if you are still putting together your portfolio. One video, I show you how to put it together from start to finish, and I have a second video where I actually show you inside of my portfolio all of the pages. That way you can use that as an example. So I will link both of those videos for you down in the description box. The third things I recommend bringing with you are a notepad and a pencil or pen. This will allow you to take notes during the interview as needed. If the administrator is sharing something about the school, make sure you write it down. Not only does it help you seem more interested, but it's also gonna help you remember, because I guarantee you your mind will go blank afterward. Then, as soon as you leave the interview and you get outside, write down any questions that you struggled to answer. That way, between that interview and whether you have a second interview with them or even a future interview, you can better plan out your answer, because if the question gets asked once, it will probably be asked in another interview as well. Speaking of questions and answers, the fourth thing I recommend bringing with you are prepared questions and answers. Almost every interview will end by the administrator asking, "Do you have any questions for us?" And your answer should always be,
"Yes, I do."
Have 1 to 2 or more questions already prepared before the interview. I recommend writing them in your notebook. That way you can literally reference them and you don't forget. Some of my favorite go-tos would be, do you have a mentor program for first-year teachers? What are you most proud of about your school? What is the biggest challenge facing your school? And what technology is available for teachers and students? I also recommend having notes on any questions you're worried you might go blank on, or any questions you were kind of struggling to answer while you were preparing. I've never had an administrator look down on this. If anything, it shows that you're being proactive and you're coming prepared. I would literally just have certain categories like classroom management, assessment, and I would have a few bulleted points that I wanted to make sure I addressed when I answered questions on those topics. If you are not already preparing answers to those commonly asked interview questions, you need to make sure you do that.
How would I describe myself? 3 words: hardworking, alpha male, jackhammer.
First of all, I do have an interview prep product in my store. It lists out a lot of the common interview questions. I have space for you to write down answers, and I also have other interview tips and tricks in there. So I will link that product for you down in the description box. I also have a YouTube video where I share sample answers for a lot of those common interview questions. So that's great for you to reference as an example and help you formulate your own responses. Now, finally, I want to share some general interview tips to help make sure you are successful. Tip number 1 is to research the school/district. You don't want to ask questions where the answers can easily be found online, because it just shows that you didn't do your homework. So spend a little bit of time trying to learn as much as you can about the school or district on their website, Facebook page, any other social media accounts they have. It's amazing what you can kind of be a detective and find online if you're looking. Tip number 2, I already mentioned this, but I'm gonna say it again: prepare answers to common interview questions. And when I say prepare answers, I don't just mean in your head. Write down your answers and practice speaking them, because having it in your head is one thing, but actually speaking it is another.
What quality would make you a good sales associate? People person?
This includes some of those basic interview questions like, tell me about yourself. What are your strengths and weaknesses? Why are you the best candidate for the position? But also one specific to teaching. You should be prepared to answer questions on classroom management, assessment, data analysis, differentiation, technology integration, all of those different areas. Once again, I do have that interview prep product where I go over all of that, so I will link that for you in the description box. Tip number 3 is to complete practice interviews. This could be with a family member, a friend, in front of your dog, or in front of the mirror. I would recommend considering recording yourself, whether it's through video or even just audio. This will help you actually hear what you sound like. And with video, you can pick up on some little mannerisms that you may not even realize you're doing during the interview. Tip number 4 should go without saying, but I'ma say it: dress professionally. Tip number 5 is to use your portfolio to answer questions. All the work you have put into this, do not let that go to waste by just having it sit in front of you during an interview. open it up, use it to answer questions. I go over this in the portfolio video, but all of those categories I mentioned, like differentiation and technology and assessment and classroom management, you should have examples of that in your portfolio. So whenever a question comes up in that topic, you can use it to answer the question. Tip number 6, and I think this is my favorite, ask to come back to a question you aren't sure how to answer. I've used this trick and it has always worked for me. No matter how much you prepare, you will probably still be asked a question where your mind goes blank and you don't know how to answer it. In those moments, you can just say, wow, that's a great question. Can we come back to that one at the end? Chances are they won't even remember to come back to it and you just got out of answering a difficult question. If they do remember to come back to it, it's okay. That at least buys you time to kind of think about it in the back of your head during the rest of the interview. And finally, tip number 7 is to send a thank you note after. If it is an in-person interview, you can actually bring a card with you and then fill it out afterward and either bring it back in or just put it in the mail. At the very least, make sure you send a follow-up email, but I really recommend having a handwritten thank you card because again, it just makes a really good first impression. That is it. Those are my best tips and tricks and strategies to get you hired for your first teaching job. All of the resources I mentioned and the other related videos will be linked for you down in the description box, and I wish you the best of luck on any upcoming interviews you have. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, please, it only takes 1 second, I promise, give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you do not miss any future videos. Share this out with a friend if you think they would find it helpful. As always, thank you for watching. I love you so much. Don't forget to put your positive pants on, and I will catch you in the next one.